too. And she remarried, as a matter of fact. She divorced Fritz, who was very pleased, and because she made him move to the States because she was very close to her brother, sister-in-law, and parents. They wanted to go to the States, so she sort of forced Fritz to go, and he would have stayed in India for some more years. And so he got a job in Dallas.
Can we start recording again?
Hmm?
Can we start recording again?
Yeah.
This is an important piece of the story, is how Fritz came here.
I just didn't want that part
I
in it.
understand.
Okay.
So he got a job in Dallas that sent him to South America all the time. He loved to travel, and the marriage wasn't very good, and the child didn't really interest him at the time, although later they were very close. And he'd be away for 6-8 months,
Wow.
and he was not one for writing. And so she said, either you come home or I divorce you. And so he was very glad to be divorced. And we were teenage friends. And whenever he was in New York on business, he visited with me. And we were very, very good friends. And she went back to India and married a mutual friend of theirs who turned out to be a good-for-nothing and lived on her father's money. He was an engineer, Austrian engineer, never did another piece of work. And also kept, after she died, he wanted to keep Scarlett as his meal ticket. And the aunt and uncle wanted her too. They had no children. The grandfather was alive, Ulfiller, and he moved back to Munich. And we wanted her, and we finally got her by inviting her for Easter. We were in Istanbul. We invited her for the Easter vacation and just never let her go back. And that bastard never wrote her a letter. She wrote to him and said she was so sorry that she had to leave him and this and that, and 11 years old.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
He never, not only did he never write a letter, he never gave her the considerable gold and silver and what have you.
Right, that his wife had.
She had a lot of stuff. And that's how I got her. And she was 11, and you would have thought at 11 she wouldn't do what she did. After about 6 weeks of calling me by my first name, she said, "Could I call you Mommy?"
Wow.
11-year-old, that speaks for what went on with her before.
Yeah.
The mother schlepped her around in India looking for men with whom she could have a relationship. And, you know, the European community knew each other very well.
Right.
And I have a very close friend who, with her husband, was in India for the United Nations. And she was European. And she told me that everybody told her about Fritz's ex-wife.
Wow.
And she was an unhappy person.
Right.
I mean, if the story is true that I told you before, you can imagine.
Yeah. What did you do when you came to New York?
What did I do?
Yeah.
I had a kindergarten teachers kind of thing, and I got jobs through the American Friends Service Committee, with whom I became friendly. And I worked, I had several jobs with children in several families. And then I went to Chicago and went to college.
You went to college in Chicago? I didn't know that.
For 2 years, I did some very foolish. I had been in school in England and had a Cambridge paper and what have you. And instead of going into the third and fourth year of college, I went into junior college, which I already had had.
Mm-hmm.
So I only did 2 years of junior college in Chicago and worked as a waitress.
You went to Chicago because Hank was there?
Partly, and because the man who said I should go to college also was there. And for a while I worked for a family on a small farm who were Church of the Brethren. Have you ever heard of that?
They're like a white supremacist.
No. They are anti-war and everything else. They're next to the Quakers.
Huh.
And they paid me $1 more than they could really afford, and that was about $7 a week. And they had 4 children, twin sons, and a little girl and a bigger boy. And can you imagine they still had those things where they...
Churn the butter?
Not the butter, the babies...
The wash, the diapers?
Diapers. And I learned how to iron men's shirts, all kinds of things. And one night they weren't there. I was alone with 1 or 2 of the children. Some friends came by, and I had just washed my hair, which was long. And I opened the door, and they looked at me, and they said, "So you are the Jewish girl they hired?"
Wow.
I said, "Yes." So that was one of my jobs, and then I had some jobs in very highfalutin places in Philadelphia, and then I went to Chicago for 2 years. And as Hank would say when he drove people around, and she worked in this restaurant, and she worked in this restaurant, I ended up in a very, very good restaurant and made quite a bit of money. And I figured out that the only job I could do would be to stand on my feet, because if I'd had a desk job, I would have fallen asleep. So I became a waitress. And I didn't mind that. And my parents once came, I was in a place that was called the Boston Oyster House. That whole hotel isn't standing anymore. And it was top whatever. We did the butter in a silver chafing dish, and we did the lobster for the people if they wanted to, and so on. And I invited my parents, who lived in Detroit. And my mother wrote a letter afterwards, and she said, "We are still talking about the excellent lobster which reminded us of former times, only we never were related to the waitress." Because being a waitress in Germany was one step up from being a street girl.
Right. Funny.
It was very funny. And then, I don't know how, somehow or other, I got, with the help of the Quakers, into the Graduate School of Social Work.
At where?
In Philadelphia,
Philly.
University of Pennsylvania.
You went to Penn.
Hmm?
You went to Penn. So did Adam. Did you know that?
Yeah, I'm a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Me too.
Woohoo!
So, and something funny happened there too. They took me because they knew that I had a lot of life experience and what have you, and even if I didn't have a bachelor's, they took me. They had several other people they took. And about 6 years later, I get a letter from them, and they said, "We looked through your thesis and what have you, and we decided that you should have a master's degree." And I got a master's.